Hello there and welcome to this video. Today I'm going to be telling you how I would have voted in every single presidential election from 1932 till 2004. I'm not going to go past 2004 because could be, it's a very divisive topic, especially 2008 as 2004 onwards, especially 2008, 2012, and 2016 was definitely, and 2020 probably one of the most divisive topics ever. But so yeah, we're gonna dive straight into it. But before I do, this is probably gonna be a couple of part couple part sort of video because just so I can break it up into pieces, and the current software I use for my videos maxes out at 15 minutes to use. And if you guys know any other good ones I could use that are that don't have time limits on it, that'd be great. But if not, then that's perfectly fine. But I probably will split it into a couple minutes. I've been posting in the past since my last video. I was very ill for quite a few days, so that's why I didn't post. But I will dive straight into it. So, by the way, I want you everybody to know that I don't have a sort of political party preference. I don't identify with the Democratic Party or Republican, and I will go completely neutral here. I'm not going to go pick or Republican for the whole time or all Democrat. I will go based on not a bias principle here, but I will go on what I think I would have voted for from 1932 onwards. Probably will be quite a few part, but we'll get straight into it, so no wasting any time. So the election in 1932, this is FDR, first term run, who was the governor of New York, and it was against incumbent President Herbert Hoover. So, as if I was living around in 1932, the New Deal would have been sort of a big choice for me because, it's very, especially in the Great Depression, it's a um, very big decision. And yeah, the ticket is John Nance Garner, who was the Speaker of the House previously, and sort of a member of Texas, who actually was known to be quite, for the time he was sort of just, a fairly respected kind of guy. But yeah, I would have probably voted in this election, more likely leaning towards FDR because, especially since the New Deal would really attract me. But also, what I do think is great, Herbert Hoover had his vice president was the first vice president that was non-white, who was, he was Native American, I think Charles Curtis was. But yeah, and I think maybe the election before I might have voted for Herbert Hoover, but in this one I would be leaning more to FDR. And of course, FDR won in the Electoral College landslide that he did have. So moving on to 1936, this is FDR's second run for president, running for second term. Again, sticking to the same VP, didn't have much challenge through it. The Republican nominee was Alf Landon, who was the governor of Kansas, and chose the publisher of the Chicago Daily News, Frank Knox, as his running mate. So in this election, it's kind of hard. I would still be leaning more to FDR here. I do think I probably would have stuck to FDR. I do think that I would have probably stuck with, especially after the New Deal, and still improving from there. So yeah, I would end up probably voting again for FDR in this election, and FDR won a landslide. So yeah. So moving on to 1940. Now this is a very hard one. So I like FDR, but I probably wouldn't have agreed with his decision to run for third term, especially breaking that tradition, even though he originally didn't really want to, but there's a lot of pressure from the Democratic Party too. So I would be kind of stuck on this one. I did very much like Henry Wallace, but so I thought he would have been very good. But I do kind of like Wendell Wilkie, so um, I don't so that would have been a hard one. Maybe I would have possibly mm, maybe for especially in 1936 in 1940, sorry, the war's going on. You know, I think change of power probably wouldn't be the best, especially in a time of war. Um, and even though the US weren't involved yet, it was still going on in Europe, and it was quite evident that they would get involved at some point. And I did very much like Henry was, so barely I would have voted for FDR. So, 1944, I would have not voted for FDR, especially this final time. And what would have pushed me even more was the Japanese interrogation camps. I thought they were absolutely horrible. And but I'm not saying, Thomas Drury probably, if he won, probably wouldn't have stopped it, because just because, one person is doing something bad doesn't mean the other person is going to do anything better. But I still would have voted for Thomas Drury, especially in this election. I wasn't a big fan of Harry S. Truman as a vice president. I liked him as a president, but not really as a vice president. And FDR, still would have liked FDR, but I don't think he would have, I don't think he should have, went on to, I would have, yeah, definitely voted for Thomas Drury, especially after the Japanese interior. And I really did like his vice president, he was, the governor of Ohio. I thought he was quite good. So, yeah, and even though he ended up losing, I do think I probably would have voted for Thomas Drury. Richard's election was a lot closer, still a landslide though for um, FDR. So moving on to 1948. Again, I would 100%, 1,000% not voted for Strom Thurmond. I would never vote for him. So he's sort of out of the the idea for that. So it's definitely between Truman or Drury. As I said before, I didn't really like Truman as a vice president. So again, this would lean me more into Thomas Drury, especially after the Democrats controlling for such a long time, 16 years. And this would make it 20 if he were to lose in 1952 or run for re-election even. But I would have voted for Thomas Drury here. Um, I I would have voted for him. I didn't think there was many Democrats also that were challenging. The only one that would have swayed my vote would have been Henry Wallace. He would have been the only one to sway my vote for the Democrats. But this was a very close election. Earl Warren, I didn't really like. I thought he maybe could have picked something better, like I don't know, just someone else maybe. But yeah, I would have probably voted for Thomas Drury again. This just thinking, I didn't really want, or but I would have, I wouldn't have really, I possibly would have voted for also the Progressive Party nomination, especially if it was Henry Wallace. That really would have swayed me there. I maybe would have, I don't know. It's either between Thomas Drury or Henry Wallace as from the Progressive Party. And as you know, ended up Harrison won ever so slightly, not winning the majority of the popular vote, but still more than Tom Stewart and Strom Thurmond. Moving on to 1952, here I think after 20 years of Democrat control, Dwight D. Eisenhower, remember in these times, Democrats and Republicans were a lot more similar than they were alike. I did like, I mean, it's 1952. I would have not known what would have happened in the future. But at this time, at this point in his career, I liked Richard Nixon. I thought he was a good choice, and I liked um I liked Eisenhower as well. I wouldn't have wanted another Democratic president. No, not at all. So Eisenhower probably would have been my safe choice. Not really anybody on the Republican side that I would have preferred. The Democratic sides, again, not really anybody. I referred Harry Truman did run for the nomination, but he didn't win it, as they nominated Adlai Stevenson instead, and John Sparksman as the VP. And as you know, Eisenhower won in a landslide in the selection. So we'll move on to the next one. Again, it was the same sort of race. Adlai Stevenson won the nomination again against Eisenhower. You know what's going to be my decision here. I'm definitely going to pick Eisenhower again. Maybe if it was a different Democratic um, nominee for president, but there wasn't really anyone here that was like exciting for it. So no, I probably would have ended up voting for um, Eisenhower again. So going back up here, again, Eisenhower won in a landslide election along with his vice president, Richard Nixon. In 1960, this here is a tough one, I'd say. I did quite like JFK, and I do still do. At the time, I really liked, but I was not that fond of LBJ, or wasn't at the time, but or would not have been at the time after doing, I thought, and I liked Richard Nixon. I thought he would have been, I thought he was very prepared for the presidency, and I did like Henry Cabot Lodge Jr. as well, but I just thought, I don't know, this is a very hard one. Maybe there, possibly would have voted, maybe ever so slightly, vote for JFK. Ever so slightly. Just a small, it would have been my vote barely, especially in 1960. Moving on to 1964. Here, I would, especially after the loss of, JFK, I would have not voted for Barry Goldwater, especially, what would have really sort of put me off was the segregation stuff, that would have been the real put off, but LBJ, what would have put me off him would have been the Vietnam War, which I would have not voted for. I would have really not wanted to vote for him, but I would not vote for George Wallace though at all. But I don't think but so I don't know if Nelson Rockefeller was the nominee, I'd probably vote for him. But no, here, mm, just I probably wouldn't have voted in this election. Probably would have sat it out. But if I had to pick a vote, it had probably have to be Lyndon B. Johnson. So sorry there, I'm just gonna have to wrap up this first video because we're running out of time. But I will put the rest of the parts up as quick as possible. So be sure to check them out.